All right, everyone, it's time to talk about RFK Jr. because I'm kind of tired of him being astroturfed as some sort of outsider or some sort of messiah of independent politics and bullshit like that, because it's actually not true whatsoever. When you look at the things that he said publicly, sometimes he tends to be a bit of a flip-flopper. Abortion would be probably the best example in contemporary sense. But I've got links in the description. Yesterday I went to his page, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I'm basically like, you're an anti-gunner who wants race-based reparations and shit like that, which is true. I can prove it. I've got the links in the description. I'll detail them in a moment. And several people jumped down my throat, and they're like, well, you're completely wrong. Everything you're saying is wrong, offering no counterpoint, by the way, in the process. It is provable and objective that he's held these opinions, but his opinions shift with the wind. Typical political bullshit, and of course he learned from the best. He's literally the son of RFK Jr. Think positively all you want about JFK, RFK, the Kennedys of that era, and I do believe that they were quite clearly assassinated by subversive forces and not singular gunmen. And by the way, RFK Jr. is fundamentally right, and he believes the same thing about Saran. And I think he would know. He is the son of the person killed. So on that, I have sympathy. But that does not lead me to automatically trust him. It's sort of like I like Donald Trump. I'll be voting for Donald Trump. If one of his kids decides to run for office in the future, I don't necessarily vote for them because I don't believe in the necessity of dynastic politics. I'd rather judge them on what they say and also, more importantly, what they actually do. When I look at RFK Jr., the things that he said have been off the chain many times, sometimes even flummoxing those within his campaign itself. Let's look at a few examples. First, on guns. RFK Jr. is an anti-gunner, but he's a disingenuous one. Because he's trying to strike the moderate, independently minded tone, he came out, and this was some time ago, and said, if an assault weapons ban were put on my desk by Congress, I would sign it. This is objective. He said that. He's doing that because then it punts it to Congress and says, well, if they don't sign off on such a thing, then, I don't have anything to do. I'm not going to go after them. I'm just going to facilitate going after them and nullifying the Second Amendment entirely in the process and ignoring the Constitution and the Supreme Court, probably before a lengthy legal battle, which he would lose. If Congress makes that mistake, that's okay. So basically he's saying Congress can nullify the Second Amendment and it's okay with him. That's an anti-gunner. This isn't a person who's principled on the Second Amendment. The idea that all modern weaponry should fundamentally be banned because most rifles these days are semi-auto. They don't make as many bolt actions these days. They're still there. They're kind of cool and still useful too. They're still used on the battlefield for certain purposes, but generally speaking, you're talking about generally modular AR or AK platform, semi-auto, with detachable magazines and all of these things because they're simply more functional. They're better in many mechanical aspects. His is nothing more than an anti-gun position because he's saying as chief executive, tasked deliberately and explicitly under our laws with defending the Constitution, he won't bother to defend it as long as Congress makes a bad decision. By the way, it also makes him look weak in the process. What about the race-based farm aid that he promised? He said he'd give $5 billion to black farmers, free and clear. Where have I heard that before? Oh, that's right, Joe Biden optioned the same thing. It was, I think, more than $5 billion. Do you know what the courts did? They laughed at him and said, you can't possibly justify this, Mr. Biden. No, it's not okay to rob the taxpayers and use a racial methodology by which to dispense the money. He tried to do that with restaurants as well. Believe it or not, Mr. Biden, this is illegal. And by the way, he never intended that to pass. It was just basically, hey, vote for me and I'll give you freebies. It was the typical liberal shuffle thing. But RFK Jr. is doing the same thing. How does this make him different from any standard neoliberal? It's the same shit the Democrats have been doing since the 80s. Basically, in the wake of Ronald Reagan and the success of his economics situation especially, they said, let's be Reagan, but with a little bit more welfare. And then they waited for their chance. They didn't have to wait long because Bush Daddy was such a fucking failure. And so Clinton basically was just a younger Ronald Reagan sprinkled with more welfare and more interventionism. And it was a winning idea at the time. Clinton got reelected easily. Then Bush comes in, he's basically the same thing as well. Obama gets in for 2 terms. The only one that stood in their way is Trump. I didn't see RFK Jr. taking the fore on any of these things. What about abortion? RFK Jr. confused his own running mate on this issue. He came out unequivocally and explicitly said there should be no limits on abortion. The caveat being, well, I would like to look for ways to make it less common, but I don't believe that there should be any limits on it. Effectively making him Ralph Northam, who tries to appeal to Christian voters by saying, trust me, basically with a wink and a nudge, because he really is just a liberal. With a wink and a nudge, I feel your pain, I don't like abortion either, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Yeah, it's terrible and wrong, but yeah, if a woman wants to abort at 7 months, that's fine with me. How, by the way, on many of these issues, is he anything other than reluctant to take a leadership position? It's fundamentally a lack of leadership. Well, I do have a problem with this, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Yes, I uphold the Second Amendment, but if Congress decides the Second Amendment should effectively be scrapped for all modern weapons, I'm not going to stand in their way. Hey, I believe that abortion is bad and wrong. In fact, it is badong. And I want to be the opposite of badong, gnawdab. Some of you will get the movie reference. But I'm not actually going to do anything about it. It's wrong. It's terrible. I'm going to what's he going to do? Browbeat women and say, please don't get abortions? Please don't get abortions. If your neighbor gets an abortion at 9 months when the baby's crowning, I'm okay with that because I don't believe that the state should be able to exercise any form of control over women, except that I do believe that, but I kind of don't, and it depends. Is the woman trying to buy a gun that Congress has banned, or is she just trying to kill a fully viable baby? He's a very confusing fellow until you consider one thing. His outsiderism. That is the sort of metric that he has designed for his campaign. I'm the outsider, I'm the independent, I've been betrayed by the parties, I'm a man of the people, is bullshit. And he's actually just another tired, boring politician like any other. And that's exactly what he is. The fact that his last name is Kennedy is absolutely meaningless to me. It's like if Jenna Bush runs for office. I don't care that your daddy and grandpappy were president. Hell, he'd probably be a better president than both of them combined. Maybe the Bush daughters should run for office. They're the sane ones. They were party girls getting all drugged up in college and stuff. Somehow, they're more sane. By the way, have you ever noticed with the Bush family, the females that marry into the family usually have a level head? Like Barbara Bush, unimpeachable character. It's just that the Bush men are just such fuck-ups. With the Clintons, they're all fuck-ups. It doesn't really matter whether they're male or female. I don't believe in dynastic politics. So the Kennedy brand doesn't appeal or disappeal to me. I have to weigh him based on what he says and what he does. When he flip-flops around, and when he won't take a hard line on any issue, so that he's trying to do the Bruce Lee thing and be as water or whatever, so that he can't, nobody can attack him because they never know what his views are on an issue, it's just disingenuous. It's shrewd. It's not a sign of unintelligence or anything like that, and if anything, it's the reverse. It's a sign that he's politically intelligent. It's also a sign that he's disingenuous and basically open to the highest bidder. Oh yeah, he donated more to me, so I'm on this side of the issue. Oh shit, now you've donated more? Well, all of a sudden I've had a road to Damascus moment. Well, I've totally switched. I was anti-gun before I was in favor of them. It'd be like a John Kerry. He's basically John Kerry. He's basically a more likable version, with an interesting voice, version of John Kerry. It's the same thing. He used to have those little flash games there with the presidential dance-off or something like that, and one of John Kerry's moves was the flip-flop because he was known for taking both sides on every issue and repeatedly and sometimes rapidly changing his mind on them. All I can say is that he's a less well-funded version of Kerry. His own running mate had to run interference for him and correct the record with regards to his views on abortion alone. But that's not the first. This is the most notable recent time he's done this, but he's done it before. On things that are highly important. Yes, the Second Amendment is important. Yes, race and bigotry at the government level is of import to many voters. He's not even an independent. He's just a standard liberal who left the Democratic Party. His ideology didn't magically change, other than he decided to stab them in the back a little bit, which is helpful and funny, but it doesn't make him particularly a good person. That's about all. Peace out.